Fantastic. So I've once again included something in the chat box. I'd love to know where you're zooming in from. If you want to type that into the chat, that would be lovely. And if you can reflect on one person um, that you either respect or admire, or could be one of your favorite people, and what quality do you love most about them? So we're going to circle back to this later. And so I just want to have you thinking about what is that quality in that person that I really admire. Um, so today, I'm Melissa Smith. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in my office. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor. I work specifically with trauma. For the last decade and then some, I have run a nonprofit for caregivers of Alzheimer's and other dementia. And in this nonprofit, we work on the well-being and the wellness of the caregiver themselves. So it wasn't focused on dementia education. It was focused very specifically on the care of the caregiver. In my own life and my own background, I was a long distance caregiver and still am to my mother. And I was a long distance caregiver while my father took care of my stepmom who had early onset, and she's since passed. So I have just a different lens and a different view on that and our overall capacity and how taxing it is, because I was able to Henry, I'll just say hi and I'll mute you so that you don't end up on the recording. There you go. Got it. And Lyle, good to see you. Yeah, perfect. I was able to view and watch my father, and because I was long distance, I would come periodically and see the toll in which it took on him. And I think it was something that he couldn't even see himself until later. And so today we'll really focus on some of those refining skills, on mindfulness and different tools that are going to help you in your walk as a caregiver. And I am being assumptive, assuming most of you are caregivers. And again, I would love to hear from you where you're zooming in from, if you'd like to add that to the chat box. And I also added a question in here. If you can think of a quality of one person that you respect, admire, or that is someone that is kind of a favorite person, what is that one quality? So I'll share my screen. Maybe I will. It'll be just a second. Perfect. All right. Sometimes when sharing, it has a mind of its own. So that's exciting. I don't want to share my desktop. Hang on just 1 second and I'll get it pulled up. This is a great opportunity. One of the grounding exercises that we'll be doing today is orienting to your space. So if you haven't done that already, you might take a moment to look around your room, look around the space that you're in, and really take a moment to notice, do I feel safe in this space? Do I feel grounded in this space? And then what would I need in order to feel a sense of embodied safety? So I've added here our website, which is caregiver-wellness.com, and my email address, my personal email address, it's caregiversretreatinfo@gmail.com. So if you want to take a little screenshot, I can also add it to the chat box later. But a great opportunity to ask any follow-up questions or stay connected. So a good question to ask is, who are you without all the doing? If you were to peel off or peel away all of the many hats in which you wear, one of my favorite poets wrote a poem about an apple. An apple is red, it's green, it's yellow, it's bruised, it's apple strudel, it's apple pie, it is crushed apple, it's a apple juice, right? Like, we are so many different iterations of an apple. We try to make ourselves all things to all people. And as a caregiver, there's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. So if you were to strip some of those away, who are you without all of that doing? Who were you before you became a caregiver? What is it you loved? What is it you were passionate about? What is it that gave you that little spark of something? Maybe you still do it. Maybe it's still a practice for you, or maybe it's fallen away just a little bit. So if you have a pen and paper and you want to journal or reflect, or even just writing that down, who am I without all of the doing? Yeah. When I have journaled this in the past, a thought that always comes up to mind, I'm younger. I feel lighter. I feel freedom. So for me, what comes up are emotion responses rather than role or designations necessarily. So just take that in for a moment. So when we think about uh, in my practice in therapy, there's a type of therapy called internal family systems. And this particular type of therapy thinks about each one of us having different parts of ourselves. We have someone who's a manager who really kind of whips things into control and wants control. We have a critic, that little voice that says maybe not good enough, or you could do more. It's that voice of guilt or shame. There's another part of us that is a firefighter. It's like constantly putting out emergencies and things that feel critical. And maybe some of them are, and maybe some of them aren't. We just have this autonomic response to certain things that create a stress response when maybe it doesn't need to be there. So we have all these different parts of us, and none are wrong and none are bad. It's how do we work with the parts of us? So that part of you, the who you are without the doing, whether that's a part that feels free or a part that feels whole or connected or has free time, right? That part of you still exists and is still with you. It's just maybe dampened or just disguised or avoided. So today I'll invite you to bring that person along in this journey. Just for this time, really allow yourself to be that person that feels a little bit lighter, that this is your moment. This is your opportunity to get fed and to spend some time nurturing yourself. So I will encourage you to stay with that. And I don't know how many of you are really familiar with mindfulness and the principles or concepts of mindfulness. I think it's valuable just to recap or focus in. My favorite definition of mindfulness is that moment in which something happens, a situation, a trigger, a circumstance, and then there is a pause or a space in which we have an opportunity to either act or react. Viktor Frankl has a similar definition that he has about emotional freedom, that there's this moment in which you recognize something, and in the space is the freedom. Meaning, if we can create some kind of mindful pause that lacks judgment and that pulls us into the present moment, then we have agency and choice. And I know some of you are thinking, okay, Melissa, but I'm a caregiver and I'm 24/7, and that is not what my experience is in my life. And yet I would have you really critically think just for a moment. There are certain pauses that we take in which we take care of ourselves. We go to the bathroom, we drink water, we have food. Um, we might call a friend for encouragement or support. We might have a community that we gravitate toward. Those are all moments in which your body is resetting its nervous system. So I'll encourage you. I don't know if you have something that you're taking sips of at the moment. I've got some sparkling water. I'm just going to have a sip of that. Yeah, I'm going to notice the flavor, the texture. Ooh, my shoulders just dropped. So the way that your nervous system works is that your throat, your eyes, your ears, all of your visceral organs are connected through these nerves that run or innervate through the back of the brain, all the way through into really the top of your thighs. And it's a wandering nerve. This nerve gives us information so that our nervous system is telling us what's going on. We're going to respond to something, or we're going to fight back or argue, or we're going to run away, or we're going to have a conversation. Are we regulated? So this is constantly feeding us information. A swallow allows us to reset the nervous system. So something as simple as a swallow, it takes a few seconds. The difference is the intention. Intention means that overall intention to cultivate awareness and keep returning to it. Awareness itself is observing thoughts, emotions, feelings in the present moment. And attitude is really how you view yourself and others. And that's that judgment piece. With mindfulness, we want to utilize this concept of curiosity. So I want to be curious about something because that is the antidote to judgment. The more I question or the more I notice, the less likely I am to say, oh, this is good or bad. And we do that all day. We decide if things are good or if things are bad. So I know it says yoga in here, but I liked the circle. So just bear with me. Movement, you can say, but mindfulness in general has so many benefits. And I'm curious if you can look at this list. If you have a practice of movement or gardening or knitting or anything that allows you to stay in the present moment without judgment and with a little bit of curiosity, right? So a mindful activity can be, right? You can mindlessly wash the dishes, or you can wash the dishes and notice the temperature. You can notice the pressure of the water. You can notice the texture. Is it sudsy, or is it gritty, or is it feel smooth? You can notice what it makes you feel when you're washing the dishes. Maybe angry because somebody didn't wash their dish and you're having to do it for them. Maybe it gives you a sense of peace, but you get an opportunity to really check in when you do it with a sense of mindfulness. And if you do, you might notice that your blood pressure lowers, your breathing is a little softer, there's less anxious feelings. When we are able to do these gentle and very small mindfulness activities, it actually helps foster a sense of resiliency. And this is what caregivers do, right? You bump up against something challenging, difficult. And when you move through it or overcome or make it to the next day, what's getting stronger is your resiliency muscle. So resiliency is that capacity to move through something that we thought was insurmountable. And we're able to look back in the rearview mirror and go, oh, I actually did that. And then that memory of overcoming, of moving through gets stronger. So which do you prefer? Do you want the habit of anxiety to get stronger or the habit of resiliency? I was talking with someone today, and she had to take the bus to come here. And she was really fearful. She didn't want to do it. She wanted to, to fall into a habit of calling someone that wasn't good for her to call. And there was a sense of courageousness that she felt of being able to do it. And she's like, all of that worry, thought, and it was actually really easy. So it's interesting how our mind will tell us information that doesn't actually match with reality at times. All right, so just checking in. How are we feeling? What are we noticing in our bodies at this moment? You can even sigh or exhale. Yeah, so someone put in the comments, well, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I have a little theory or philosophy on this, that caregivers will often be pushers more than they are receivers. Can anybody relate? Yeah. Right? So that phrase is a bit of a pusher. And what happens when we become chronic pushers? We don't give ourselves those resets. It doesn't mean we don't do hard things, but if we're doing something that is to the point of exhaustion, overexertion, not asking for the help that we need, thinking we're the only ones that can do it and do it right, that kind of mindset moves us toward overwhelm, burnout, or compassion fatigue. And so I'll explain a little bit of those differences, and I'll come back to my PowerPoint. The overwhelm, we can't even think of the next right step. Overwhelm is you feel so stretched. Stress is that is when we have an activity that is greater than our capacity to perform the task. And so that creates stress. Anxiety is actually when fear is introduced, fear comes into the picture. And then when fear is there, then we feel some nervous system responses, maybe heart palpitation, racing, some worry, right? So fear is often accompanied with worry, or it could be paired with avoidance. I don't know how many can relate to that. If you just think, I'm just not going to think about it. I'm just not going to, right? Well, then it's still there tomorrow. So noticing, okay, my heart is racing. I'm feeling my breath escalate. What is this? Okay, I'm feeling really fearful that something might happen to my person I'm caring for. Okay, check in with what is in your control. Because worry, when anxiety becomes worry, worry is typically associated with future tripping. So projecting out into tomorrow and thinking and thinking and thinking about it. And worry can mimic feeling like you're doing something about it. So your mind actually thinks, I'm doing something about it because I'm really thinking about it. and then it just feeds that hormonal response, the hormonal stress response. So worry is out in the future, and it typically means we have no control. Yeah. Now, being concerned, being perplexed, being, there's so many different adjectives that you can substitute for worry. And my curiosity would be, check in. Is it really worry? Could it be concerned? Do I have any control at all? Or is it something that is out of my control? One example as a caregiver might be, you're out having coffee with a friend, someone else is watching your person, and you get a phone call that the ambulance has come. And now, every time the phone rings, when you're not with your person, your heart races. And there's this feeling of, is something going to go wrong? When's the next shoe going to drop? Right? So that is fear moving through anxiety. And how do we work with that? We check the facts. What can I control? What's the likelihood of that happening again? How can I manage my own emotions and my own emotional regulation to be where I am and be present? So these are all practices, and that's where those, hopefully your bucket of mindfulness will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you'll find different tools in which will help you move toward that sense of equanimity, which is being okay with uncertainty. Yeah, it's a lot. All right, I'm going to move back to my shared screen here. You guys are amazing. I hope that you will put questions or comments in the chat box as they come up for you. So what are some of the best practices for mindfulness? Here's a few that I'll share with you. One is to take space, and I'll use the acronym STOP. So S stands for stop. It's kind of obvious. T, take a breath. So do it with me. Breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth. Good. O is observe. What am I noticing? Well, my shoulders just dropped. Oh, but I'm still feel some tightness here. Okay, I'm going to take a few more breaths, or I'm going to scribble and try to get some of that energy out. I might stand up and shake my arms, like observing what's happening in the body. And P is proceed with care. The other thing to think about is, what action or behavior would I like to do in response to what I notice in my body? So stop, take a breath, observe, notice what's happening in my body. Super interesting. My jaw felt really tight just then. Feel like I want to swallow. And then P, proceed. So notice when you kind of pick up back where you left off, are you at least not worse, but maybe a little bit more regulated? So anytime we do these mindfulness practices, we want things to either stay the same or get just a little softer in our bodies. All right, so taking space. I'm curious, you can add in the chat box, what are some ways that you take space? I'll tell you a few more of my tricks. One of them, yeah, I don't know if someone was going to unmute and add, but okay. One of them for me is just to simply say, I'm going to use the restroom, or I'm going to step out in the hallway and get some water. I'll be right back. I'll be back in a few minutes. Or I'm going to take about 20 minutes and walk around the block, and then I'll be back and we can pick this conversation up. Or I need to go to the kitchen just for a minute. So whatever you can do to create physical space between you and the situation will help you regulate. And it could be as simple as saying, I'm going to go to the restroom. And I think, yeah, I love this. Someone added, I turn my phone off for 30 to 60 minutes. And I think that is a really wonderful practice. I think so many times we think we're regulating by looking at our phone, or we're double checking things. But how can you create some space between you and maybe something that makes you feel more anxious, which often our phones can, so that you can be a little more centered and regulated? So take space, creating a pause, leaving the room to come back, closing your eyes. Now, not everyone feels comfortable doing that. But if you are comfortable doing that, I'll make an offering for you, or a suggestion. Take your eyes a little bit off the screen. And if it's comfortable, close your eyes. If it's not, then let your eyes fall on a color, a photograph. Maybe if you have a window, you can look out the window. Let it be something soft. So if you're focusing on something, that requires intention. And then you can start to increase your awareness, being curious about what you're looking at. But if you actually take that sense organ out, By closing the eyes, the hearing shifts. You might notice things you didn't hear before. That is, of course, if that's accessible to you, if hearing is accessible. The other thing that might heighten is you might start to notice sensations. This is why many people think they can't meditate. Meditate isn't being without thought. It's actually learning how to be with your thoughts without really clinging to them or deciding that they're true all the time. Because meditation allows us to move through and be creative, all of those things, because we have a brain and we think that's how it works. But being able to tease out a thought that could be harmful, a thought that could be positive, and then making the choice on what we decide to focus on. So closing our eyes lets the other senses become alive. Grounding. So we started out our session by taking a look around the room. And so I'll encourage you to look around the room and look for 5 things. I usually look for things in my favorite color, which is green. You might look around and just label things like book, plaque, ceiling, painting, cup. Now, if you actually did that, my curiosity is, were you thinking about other things when you were labeling? Probably not. Your brain is actually a monotasker. We think we're multitasking, but what's actually happening in the brain circuitry is task switching. And some people get really good at it. But what happens is when we're constantly task switching by thinking we're multitasking, is that we're not fully efficient or embodied at the single task. And we're less focused and aware. An example might be, how many of you have gotten in the car from work or from where you caregive or from a particular place you go often, and you drive home? And when you get home, you don't even remember the drive. Anybody have that experience? It is not amnesia. Yeah, Ruth's like, oh yeah. It is actually our capacity, right? It's muscle memory, which get us home, but we're most likely doing a mild form of disassociation. We might be ruminating on something. We might know the path so well that we haven't paid attention to our general surroundings. Really paying attention gives you, right, the ability to be a defensive driver, the ability to be alert, aware. It's the same when you are with someone. How many of you have had a conversation with someone and you're like, wait a minute, what did you just say? Because your mind was busy either thinking about what you wanted to say or jumping ahead in the conversation, or maybe your mind drifted off to a point they were making and you were remembering your own story. So how can you, as a practice of mindfulness and as a practice of grounding into self, really become curious about your surroundings? Curious as you drive home, curious as someone else is speaking. This helps ground you in the present moment and helps you have clarity and intention. Viewing nature is probably my most favorite way of practicing mindfulness. I try to get the horizon and set my circadian rhythm every morning, going for a walk with my dog. And I feel different. And for some of you, that might mean a cup of your whatever is your routine and just looking out the window, or if you're able to physically be outside. But just notice, how many points during the day could you add in just simply noticing nature? And for some of us, it means that we don't get outside at all. Is there something we can look at, a photograph, a painting that creates a sense of soothing and softening. So let's do that just for a moment. If there's something nearby, I've got actually a really lovely picture of a sky just right in front of me on my desk. And it's beautiful. When I look at it, my shoulders drop, my jaw softens. I even notice that I kind of sit a little bit softer in my body. Maybe their breath changes just a little bit. So just noticing that. So, what is the awareness of your body? What are you observing? Yeah. And then when you're ready, you can bring your awareness back. So, here I have a suggestion for best practice with our phone. Many of us are really attached, have a strong relationship. Maybe you even named your phone. I know some people who have. How can you switch to mindfully making your phone a part of your day versus letting it be your emergency response system? One thing would be to, if you have sort of a screen time on your phone, you can actually set limits for particular apps in which you know that you are mindlessly scrolling. And how we know that something is too much is if, let's say, a period of time goes by and you actually don't feel better by whatever you were doing on your phone, or maybe you even feel a little bit worse. That's when you know it's time to make a switch or change. So, finding something inspiring. One thing that I do is I've actually created on my notes tab all these quotes. I also have a particular folder in my photos, which just bring me a lot of joy. And so rather than going to my normal app that I would go to that I just scroll on, I make myself go there first. Some of you listen to podcasts or books or different things. Yeah. Oh, I love this. Someone interjected about nature, that they're a teacher and they keep lots of plants in the classroom. And a few days ago, someone came into my room to look at my plants. Oh, I love that. You don't have any idea how happy that makes me. So you can probably see all of my plants in the back here. I get a lot of joy from that. So thank you for sharing that. And what a profound way to connect with that person. So if someone is making an effort to come in and take a look at your plants, um, that's something that you can connect on, have a conversation, and begin to co-regulate. So co-regulation is our ability to attune with another person and have a sense of embodied safety with that person. All right. So these are just some suggestions with your phone, right? Read something inspiring, find a quote, look at a photo, play a song, sing to it. Set a timer when you go on your phone. So when it goes off, you stop. Set a timer to do breathing practices. Text a friend. Encourage someone else. And remember, we're using it to not avoid, but in order to use it as a tool to enhance our lives, right? You're in charge. You get to decide what enhances your life or what's harmful. All right. So we're going to end today with just gentle breathing practice. Super simple to remember. Inhalation, thumbs up, is enlivening. Thumbs down, exhale, is calming. So we want the enlivening to be longer if we are tired, depleted, exhausted. We want to take a big, quicker breath. Try to breathe up into our top shoulders. If we're wanting to calm or soothe, you'll breathe in through the nose, and you want your exhale to be as long as you can make it. So the formula is inhale for enlivening, exhale for calming. So asking yourself what you need right now. Let's do 2 breaths together. So breathe in, you decide, enlivening my inhales longer, calming my exhale is longer. The key to transformation as you breathe in is to notice how you feel before and then how you feel after. All right. You all are just lovely and amazing. And I feel so grateful to have spent this time with you. If you have any other comments or feedback for me, I'd love for you to put it in the chat box so that I can share it with the powers that be. And I'll remind you, our website is caregiverwellness.com. You're welcome. I do 2 monthly series, one with